Hi everyone, my name is Renee Ebanks and I am the program manager at the Alex Panton Foundation. And today for our Lunch and Learn, we are going to look at the silent cost of alcohol, a look at alcohol use and mental wellness. And this is in partnership with National Drug Council, or NDC for short. And this is in line with or in light of Alcohol Awareness Month. And today our presenters are going to be Dr. Jennifer Robertson and Kenzy Wright. And before I move on, I just want to ask if anyone is able to stay to the very end, we are going to ask you to complete a feedback survey for us. So I'm going to send that in the chat, but please hold on until I do so, please, because your feedback means so much to us. Okay, so we're going to go through the agenda at this time. So as we will go in, we're going to look at introduction of presenters. So I'll have these two lovely ladies come in and speak about themselves for a little bit. Then we're going to look at defining disorder alcohol use, then defining and exploring hidden costs, cognitive, social, emotional, physical, spiritual, and motivational cost of alcohol use. And then we're going to look at harm reduction. So some strategies to lessen the harm caused by alcohol, and then we're going to look at some resources and references, and then we're going to have a Q&A at the end if you have any questions, and then we're going to do the feedback survey. So I am going to go ahead and pass it on to our presenters to allow them to introduce themselves.
Yeah. Okay, so hi everybody, thanks for coming. My name's Dr. Jennifer Robertson. I'm a senior counselling psychologist based at Aspire. We're on Eastern Avenue. We are a specialist service. We support people who've experienced trauma. So that can be across the lifetime. We work with young people, we work with families. I specialise more in working with adults. And when we say trauma, that can be something somebody's experienced in their childhood. It can be a capital T trauma, which someone might have experienced something that was life-threatening or felt very life-threatening, or it might be more relational trauma, just sort of injuries to their relationships with caregivers. And yes, so I've got contact details at the end if anybody wants to reach out to me or Aspire after the talk. And yes, I'm Scottish and been on Ireland for about 5 years. Just a wee quick background about me.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking your time to be here on your lunch break. My name is Kenzy Wright. I am a counselor with the Department of Counselling Services with the team of the Counseling Center. And my area of specialty is going to be that in drug and alcohol counseling. This is something that I'm very passionate about, and it is a real issue that is affecting the community of Cayman. So I'm really happy that we're here to shed some light on what those costs may be. Why did I get into this field is when I first graduated, I really wasn't too sure which area I did want to specialize in, and I was able to see how really connection was the agent of change in addiction services, and to be able to provide that moment of connection is something that I find really, really important, and you don't have to be a professional to do so. So I'm excited to really talk about the cost of alcohol addiction, alcohol use, as well as the resources that are available here on island. So thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks, Kenzy. Okay, so yeah, I'll just give us a little bit of an introduction. So when we're talking about alcohol misuse, I kind of want to, I know that Kenzy mentioned there, like addiction, and I myself have a background in working in rehabilitation services, forensic settings like prisons, which is often what we think about when we think about alcohol use. We think, oh, you've got a problem when words like addiction and dependency and words like rehabs and prisons start coming into play, right? But what we're talking about today is hidden cost of alcohol. So we're not necessarily talking about that end of the spectrum, people, when drinking becomes that extreme. I want us to think about, I want us to have another way of thinking about alcohol. So the language towards alcohol use has changed in the last few years. We tend not to, as I say, actually say necessarily off the bat terms like addiction and dependency. The DSM, which is a bit like, if you've heard of the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, it's like the big Bible of diagnostic terminology for mental health and neurodivergent conditions. It talks about alcohol use disorder. So it doesn't say alcohol dependence or addiction, it says alcohol use disorder. So we want to think about alcohol as, what is our relationship like with alcohol? Is our relationship healthy or is it disordered? And if it's disordered, to what degree is it disordered and how is that affecting us, right? So the DSM has this list of 11 criteria, And if you have two of these within a 12-month period, that would sort of put you into the category of a mild alcohol use disorder. You've got 4 to 5 in the last 12 months, you're talking about moderate alcohol use disorder. You've got more than 6, you're talking about severe. So I want us to go through these because I think they might be quite interesting to think about. They might not always be what people think would be linked with, an actual issue, right? So number one, larger, like greater use than intended or for a longer period than intended. So drinking more or for longer than you plan to. Now that's a little more common in society than, getting withdrawal symptoms or, losing your job through drinking, So again, we're not thinking about extremes because that's how a lot of people can talk themselves out of thinking they have a disordered relationship with alcohol, right? They think if it's something lower key that it's not as severe. But the DSM includes these things as ways of gauging your relationship. So that larger or longer use than intended, persistent desire or unsuccessful cut downs. So when we might have said, I'm going to drink less tonight, or I'm going to have dry January, or I'm going to not drink during the week, then we've been unsuccessful at that. We've not been able to desist successfully from alcohol consumption. Time spent. So how much time do you spend obtaining, consuming, and recovering from alcohol consumption? Note here, it doesn't ask, what do you drink? It doesn't ask, what time of day do you drink? It doesn't ask, is it a cocktail or is it a wine or how much did it cost? It asks, how long are you doing it for? How much are you thinking about it? How much have you tried unsuccessfully to cut down? So I just really want us to think of it that way, okay? It's asking about craving. So do you have a really strong urge or desire to specifically to consume alcohol? Does it ever get in the way of role completion? Have you ever found it hard to complete your role as a parent or, complete education or work attendance? Does it get in the way of those things? Does it bring about any social difficulties? Like, do you end up in high key or low key conflicts with people? Do you end up with social drift from people that are healthier or kind of ending up in social situations that aren't maybe that satisfying or even harmful? Does anything else suffer? Do any activities end up falling by the wayside? You give up other stuff that's healthy, that might be career development, it might be fitness, it might be non-alcohol based socializing, personal development, hobbies. Does anything suffer or get abandoned? Any hazardous use? So these last ones start to come into more what we think about as more classic dependence and addiction. So hazardous use, like alcohol leads to actual being in physical harm or dangerous situations. Like we think about, drink driving and there's an accident, or completing a dare because we've lost our sense of fear and something bad happened, like these kinds of things. Physical or psychological problems that are a bit more apparent, and that we continue to drink despite that harm. Tolerance. So, I used to, just drink a few wines to get a buzz, but now I'm drinking the bottle. So, does our tolerance increase? Has it increased over the last 12 months? And withdrawal, again, that's that more classic kind of, like when we work in rehabilitative services, we see people physically withdrawing. Do you get like the shakes? Do you start to get symptoms of delirium tremens as you withdraw? Okay. So, does anyone have any questions about that? Is that's our starting point? That's our kind of definition for alcohol use disorder. Anybody? Okay, we can have questions at the end as well. So we're thinking about what do we mean when we say hidden costs? So hidden costs are ones that are a little bit less visible, a little bit less conspicuous than those we typically associate with alcohol. So the more visible ones are, like we just said, signs of withdrawal, like getting tremors, or visible signs of intoxication, like being very being very kind of drunk and intoxicated, which we know isn't good for our body, or something visible like, a change in weight, or, change in our skin, or something very apparent. We know that it impacts mortality rate. We know that there's conspicuous costs to public health services and care services. There can be very clear and obvious legal consequences to alcohol consumption if we engage in behaviour that's illegal. But we're not so much really talking about that. We're thinking, what are the things that are a little more subtle, the things that are a little bit less apparent? So this might be, what impact does your relationship with alcohol have on how you think, the beliefs you have about yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you reason, your mood, your social patterns, skills, decision-making, your sense of being present and mindful, even your sense of spirituality or connection with a broader belief system, with your with your sense of identity. And some they might be physical, which is obviously tangible, but they might be less visible. So physical but less visible, like STDs. It might be something like our priorities, our sense of kind of how we organize our life, and things like our finances. We might not be losing homes and completely, succumbing to alcohol's taking over our spending entirely, but we might not have the savings we thought we would have, or we might not be ready to buy a house. We just keep renting because we're spending. Okay. Has anyone got any hidden costs they want to add? Anything they can think of that I haven't touched on? Okay, everyone's very, very quiet. I'm assuming you're all keenly listening. Okay, so think about oh, hang on, I can see there's a wee chat box. I know it's fine. Okay, so we think about impact on thoughts and beliefs. So the most obvious one is cravings and preoccupation. So how much of your headspace is occupied by kind of daydreaming about, oh, it'll be nice to be happy hour, or I wonder what I'm going to do at the weekend, or I better get beers in because if just some of it's low level background noise. It might not feel like it's right at the front, but how much of your kind of background noise headspace is alcohol consuming can be something to think about. This one I find really interesting is this notion of seemingly irrelevant decisions, right? So it's like how alcohol can subtly hijack our thinking. So it might not be, we know that if it's a clear craving, like I want to drink, and then the decision is I then go to the bar and drink, or I go to Blackbeard's and buy a bottle of wine. But these are ones that are a little bit creepier than that and a little bit less obvious than that. So for example, when I think about things people might say, it might be, say somebody's living with a partner, and they've been watching some movies, they've been watching some Netflix series together, right? And they usually watch the episodes together. But the partner's a bit late coming home, and they think, oh, I'll just watch it on my own. I'll just watch it myself. And then partner comes home and they're like, oh, you said you'd wait for me, you didn't wait. Before you know it, there's an argument. Before you know it, there's an excuse. Well, you never listened. I can't stay in the house with all this angst. I'm going to the pub. And before you know, you're down the pub. And it's like these little decisions that they're almost like, we're kind of setting ourselves up for an excuse to drink, or even like I hear people saying like, I'm trying to get my steps in, I'm trying to walk a bit more. So I'll park further from Foster's, so I've got a bit more cardio to do. And then, I walked past Blackbeard's and they had that kind of promotion in the window. So I went in and bought, just went in and bought a couple of bottles. These little decisions we make that can actually be subtly influenced by a low hum, like a low key desire to drink, but we're not really naming it and acknowledging it and owning it. I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to move on to just jump to one slide and come back, because I think when you get thoughts like that, it's a bit like, hang on, I can't get sorry, 2 seconds till I jump. I like a visual, right? So I think about these thoughts. So when you get like three raccoons in a trench coat, they're trying to look like a person, right? It's as if the cravings are like kind of three raccoons in a trench coat going, oh no, this is just about us wanting to watch Netflix. This is just about us trying to get our steps in. It's like it's like cravings hiding and pretending to be a logical, reasonable thought. So I think that I quite like that little visual. Is ask yourself, is this really truly an honest, logical thought, or is it three cravings in a trench coat? So I just think that's I like a visual that helps me remember stuff. So something to think about. We go back to beliefs. So this is something I see a lot in practice, is when people start to have alcohol as part of their, maybe not their daily life, but their weekly, monthly, it's a big part of their life. It can start to shift their belief patterns. They can start to build beliefs of like, oh, I need alcohol to relax, to chill out. And they might even start to kind of well, everyone does that, don't they? Everybody just needs alcohol to chill out, or, well, I'm a lot funnier and kind of lighter when I've had a drink. So I'll have a drink before I go, and then I'll it'll be better for everybody. We'll all have a better laugh, or I'm more attractive, or I'm more sociable, or it can start to actually increase your fragility and increase your helplessness, but you're mistaking it for like this global fact. You're like, oh no, this isn't about me losing my resilience and my strength and my self-belief. This is just how everybody is, right? Everybody's like this. Everybody knows alcohol helps you relax. Everybody knows it makes you funnier. So it's another one of these raccoons in a trench coat situations. It's like, is that true? Do you believe that? Was this always true for you, or is alcohol starting to erode your sense of self a wee bit? So I think that's quite important, and that's a lot more subtle. You know, that might not even be that obvious to your own self until you really start like listening to how your head's talking. Cognitive distortion, so minimizing, like, ah, only had a couple, you know, or blame shifting, like, well, it wasn't my fault, like, you know, she came in shouting and bawling and moaning. I needed to go to the pub. It wasn't my fault, was it? You know, or black and white thinking, like, well, I'm either going to go and have a drink or I'm not going to go, because if I go and don't have a drink, it's going to be rubbish. It's going to just be boring. That's really black and white, right? Or mental filtering. You know, it's like we kind of only see, like, when we get somewhere, the only thing we're noticing is, like, you know, the free drinks or the happy hour menu, or the, you know, we're almost kind of filtering out other things that might actually also help us enjoy the event. We're kind of fine tuning into something. And we know that alcohol can impact how our planning, our decision making, our ability to inhibit ourselves, and we'll talk a bit about this later as well. Okay, and that's if you start to get into the moderate and severe level of alcohol consumption, that doesn't just apply to when you're intoxicated. It will start to impact your planning, inhibition, and reasoning even between drinking. Okay, so here's my trench coat, guys, again, just so you remember them. And then we think about the neuropsychological impact. So not just the impact on how you think, but the impact on your brain operation. So we think about rewards, your reward system. The more you pair and the more you consume alcohol and enjoy that sensation, and start to build that paired association, that pattern, your brain starts to almost like seek it out and find it more rewarding and more satisfying than other rewards, and starts to like prioritize it. And you can even hear that, you know, sometimes people will be like, oh, well, yeah, I can do a bit of breathing or grounding, but it's not going to hit the spot like a wine or a margarita, is it? You can almost hear people talking that out and listen out for you doing it with yourself. And yeah, that kind of paired association. So we start to, you know, associate, oh, they're my drinking buddy, this person I associate with alcohol, or this particular place, or this particular time. So the more we do that, the harder it is to step back from alcohol, because all these other things start reminding you. It's almost like it starts waking up the desire for alcohol in your body without having any conscious thought about it. It's just that kind of association. So yeah, when it gets to Friday night, you might be like, oh, I don't think so much about alcohol on a Wednesday or a Tuesday, but suddenly Friday, because I've paired that association, suddenly I'm like looking for it. You know, I've got the taste for it. Okay, we might build it in. It goes back to the reward piece. It might be, oh, when I complete a deadline, I go out, I have a drink. You know, that's just what you do. So the more we strengthen that pathway, that little neural connection, the harder it is to break. So just catching yourself doing that. The other thing I find really interesting is anticipatory reward. So when I used to work in a rehab, even when clients had finished their detox, so the way it would work, they'd have to wait in a queue, then they come in and get the medication and go. But even when they finished their detox, they'd be like, oh, I need a paracetamol now. And the reason they would ask for that, it wasn't because they wanted the paracetamol, it's because when they sat in the queue to come into the medical room, they got that anticipatory reward. They got that little jolt of, I'm about to get something. So that's obviously at the, you know, the really severe end of drug use and alcohol use. But even before it gets to that point, we can start to get that. And then you probably, anyone who's had any alcohol for any sustained period can probably identify with that, like almost like looking forward to it. That in itself becomes part of what's appealing. This bit about reduced top-down control. So we kind of need this, you know, prefrontal cortex, front of our brain, where all the reasoning and logic and planning and consequential thinking is at. We need that to make good decisions. But when we're drinking, it's a bit of a myth that this goes offline completely. You'll see that in social media. They say your prefrontal cortex goes offline. That's not true, but it will be a bit. It's like it starts to just kick about in a hammock. Like it starts to just chill and not be quite as active and responsive. It just starts to be like, yeah, you know. And before you know it, you're in the reward centers and you're in your mid and lower brain, and you're making decisions from more of an emotional place or an impulsive place or an appetite-driven place. Okay. And yeah, impaired working memory and processing speed. So it can start to get in the way of, you know, recall and being able to process information. Okay. Physical impacts. So these are some of the less visible ways that alcohol can show up. So sleep quality. When people consume alcohol and substances, particularly if it becomes quite extreme, you can almost have such an absence of REM sleep, you'll stop dreaming. Like again, and when I worked in the rehab, there'd be clients when they regained their sobriety, they'd be like, I've not had a dream in 10 years, these are freaking me out, because they've not had REM sleep. So you might be sleeping, but it's kind of passing out, it remains shallow. Particularly if you have actually had alcohol, not just between drinking. So, but again, we're not necessarily talking about that extreme level, but it's just noticing, checking in with yourself. What is my sleep like when I'm drinking and between drinking? Do I feel rested? Am I falling asleep easily? Am I dreaming? Am I staying asleep? Think about libido and sexual functioning. We know it can reduce desire and it can reduce performance. In the moment, we can have that short-term disinhibition, in the UK, we've got phrases like beer goggles and stuff. What people mean by that, is that in the moment they can find somebody sexually appealing and they can have sexual impulses, but when they sober up, they're like, oh no, that isn't really how I feel. That was just how I felt under the influence. But it certainly leads to, there might be that short-term disinhibition and heating up of your libido, but longer term, it has real consequences for libido, sexual functioning, all of that kind of stuff. And that's not that might not be obvious to everybody, but it might be something that, as we say, is a hidden cost. Your appetite, so it can start to get in the way of hunger and fullness. So, when people are drinking, especially, it can be like you can get a false sense of hunger. Like, I really want to eat. I want salt and fat, and your healthy decision making with food can start to go out of the window a little bit. And then when people are withdrawing, they can go to the opposite end where they're eating less. So having regular, consistent nutritional food intake can be impeded if we're drinking frequently. And yeah, like we said, poor food choices. Organ strain. So even before we get to a more extreme point, we can be putting our liver, kidneys, heart, and brain under a bit of stress, that they're laboring away trying to process alcohol, and that might not be apparent until we get older. STIs, so again, that doesn't come through alcohol consumption directly, but it can be a consequence of, as we're drinking and we've got lower inhibitions and this part's in the hammock chilling out, we might not be making decisions that are the wisest, and we might be, because we're more impulsive, we might not be stopping to take precautions and be careful. So yeah, we can be at higher risk of things like STIs and unprotected sex. Gastrointestinal stuff. So, and I think a lot of people think they can protect themselves from this with expensive alcohol. I think that's a bit of a mythology. If I buy nice, triple distilled vodka, or I buy expensive Chardonnay, that it won't have as harmful effect on my gut. And I don't know that logic quite pans out. If we're consistently consuming alcohol, it can still irritate our gut lining. It can still give us reflux, bloating, poor digestion, and impact our microbiome. Okay. So, then, anyone got any questions on that? Okay. I always think. Oh, hang on. Oh, slides are in a wee bit of a different order. Sorry, 2 seconds till. I think there's a wee slide missing. There's one about emotional impact. I can't see that now, but I'll talk about that. So I like a visual. So there's a wee slide I can't find. Let me just, it's not there. But what I was going to talk about here was emotional impact. So we think about when we're drinking. I often think that when people are consuming alcohol, we often think people are trying to avoid and trying to forget. I think sometimes what we're kind of trying to do is more like go and visit our feelings in the zoo. It's a bit like, I feel like people are trying to, they might be telling a difficult story or recounting a difficult experience, and it's like they kind of they want to touch on it, and they want to have emotions on it, but they don't want to get overwhelmed by them. So I think when you're drinking, it's almost like it puts a pane of glass between you and your feelings. It's like, oh, I talked about that, and maybe I cried and I was sad, but I don't have to recall it too much because I was drinking. I didn't have to really properly get into that emotion and actually process it. So I don't know if that makes sense to people, but that's kind of, hang on, there's a wee that. Just seeing if there's a wee question. Fine. So yeah, that is something I noticed. I think people can almost use alcohol as like a way of like going to visit their feelings in the zoo, or like as if the alcohol is holding their hand while they feel something, but it actually prevents proper processing. Even if you're crying, even if you're talking about something, even if you it's this false sense of having actually immersed yourself in it. It's still behind the glass. It still is undigested, if we're using alcohol to cope with something difficult. So now if that makes sense to people, that's just my way of kind of trying to think a bit about how emotions and alcohol can go together. But we think about mood, so alcohol can certainly get in the way of us feeling safe and settled. It can leave us feeling anxious. It can leave our mood feeling very low. We can have a lot of guilt and shame and fear when we do sober up, particularly if we have struggled with recall. As we're drinking, it can give us a distorted sense of mood that can leave us confused. We can be like, how come I was so happy and jokey, but I don't really feel like that? So it can start to create this confusion around our identity of how come I'm so happy then, but I'm not like that here? Or how come I get so upset by that, but it seems okay when I'm sober? So it can also lead to a kind of a confused inner state. So yeah, again, these might not be noticeable. These might not be things people are talking about, but that might be what's happening internally for you as you're consuming alcohol. Okay. 2 seconds. So social impact. So think about people may well be socializing quite happily when they're consuming alcohol. It might not be that there's a dearth of social opportunities, but it's thinking about quality. So there may be many friends, there may be many outings, but are they friends that you have shared real interest with? What kind of conversations might you have with that person? Would you sort of engage with them if they weren't drinking? Do you even find yourself drinking to tolerate their company, but their company, so they'll do? I'm not saying that's true of everybody. I don't think if you have any kind of alcohol with a friend, then it's a fake friendship. That's not what we're saying. But what this talks about is inviting you to just think about the points we've raised, and if anything applies to you, just being curious. So it's like, oh, are the friendships I've got, maybe they contain, shared alcohol consumption as part of it, but the bigger part is something else. It's, it's a hobby that we share, or it's how well we talk to each other, it's how well we lift each other up, it's that we encourage each other, or is it? Oh, actually, when I think about it, the main thing is they're available, and they will quite merrily engage in alcohol consumption, and sometimes I need someone that's up for it, right? So I just want to kind of flag that, and also your social decision making. So would you choose, even back to the raccoons in the trench coat, it might not be obvious, but are you subtly kind of choosing friends who you can see are up for it, available, like to drink, that's a priority, over people who might actually be a bit more grounded, you might actually have a bit more in common with other than that behavior, or who might challenge you, or who might help you grow? Are you engaging in a kind of priorities and hierarchy where you're kind of subtly choosing the more of the kind of party folk than people that you might actually have something more meaningful with? This one, parenting, I think is a really key one, because people will often say things like, I don't drink in front of my kids, so they're not affected. Or I don't parent my kids, like when I'm being intoxicated, I'd always like the babysitter's there, and then I come in and go to bed, they never see it, right? But what kids might see is your emotional absence or your despondence the next day. They might witness, kids are very, very attuned to change. They might go, oh, mom or dad are a bit different on Sunday than they are on Saturday. And I don't really have a narrative for that. I just know there's a shift and a change. They might notice that when they're trying to play with you and engage with you, you're just that bit more checked out. So it might not be the classic obvious, I'm blatantly drinking in front of my kids. It might be the impact, the hidden cost is that I'm less present, I'm less attuned, I'm less aligned, I'm more confusing for my kids. Or I'm even like, I've had some people be really, really honest and say, when I've been drinking, the next couple of days, I can find my kids a nuisance. I can find it. I can find them. They're because my tolerance is low, because I'm rough, I'm feeling hungover. I don't have the tolerance for their noise or their questions or all the movement in the house. So, and kids know that. Kids can pick up when you've got less tolerance for them, right? So I just think that is quite important. And catching any little rules you've got in your head that excuse you, like, oh, well, I don't drink in front of them, so I don't have an impact. It's like, okay, we'll just, again, I know this is an extreme example. We're not necessarily talking about extremes, but just to highlight that point about children, I had a client who quite a young girl, she was in her mid-20s in Scotland, and her wee boy was, I think he was 2 or 3. And the reason she came to rehab is because she was in the shopping. She had all those rules, like, he never sees me. She didn't think he was affected. And she started putting items on a conveyor belt in a grocery store. And when she put the bottle of wine, because in the UK the alcohol and the foods all together, you can do all your shopping in one place. So she's putting the groceries out, then she puts the bottle of wine out, and the wee boy goes, "Oh, that's mummy's silly juice." And she had no idea that he was even capable of recognizing that association between her drinking and her acting differently. She didn't think he noticed. She thought she hid it really well. So I'm just highlighting that. It can be impacting young people more than we think. We give them a bit more credit for their ability to notice change and notice associations. Risk taking. So yeah, we can be, because we talked a little bit about social choices and priorities. But yeah, risk taking. We might just do things when we've had a drink that we wouldn't do normally. I don't know if you saw, there was a recent viral story of a boy at a party, and he got drunk and someone dared him to eat a snail, and he did, and then he caught an infection from it, and it paralyzed him and killed him in the end. Like, I know it's very extreme, but the reason I'm saying that is because I don't think that boy would eat a snail in his sober, Tuesday afternoon self, but he'll eat a snail when he's had a few drinks. So we can all do things that we would never do if we were sober, that would repulse us, or that we would just think were ridiculous. So and even, like, I think on Ireland, we all know the drink driving statistics, people thinking, oh, I'll just, like, I'll be able to manage it, I'll just jump in the car. So I think these are, or I'll go swimming, or, things that suddenly are much less safe if we've got alcohol in our bodies. And this piece here about reputation. So we talk about hidden costs. It might not be that alcohol's cost you your public reputation. It might not be that you've been named and shamed and lost your job, but it might just be people are on the down low, kind of like, have you seen her on a night out? She gets a bit all over the place, or, God, I never see her without a cocktail. She always seems, we just don't know. Sometimes we even have that blind spot to how people perceive us, or the reputational impact of frequent alcohol consumption. Okay. So, and we think about spiritual and motivational impact. So I talked earlier about the emotional side of, we can almost feel quite disjointed between who we are in one state, an intoxicated state, and who we are when we're not. But we can also get this, another kind of misalignment might be who I want to be. Like, I might want to be someone that is organized, or that, gets my promotion, or that, gets into creativity, or that travels, or who you want to be might start becoming out of step with who you actually are, because alcohol is taking up your finances, it's taking up your energy, maybe the people you're socializing with aren't the kind of people that are like, hey, do you want to go on a hike, like, go to Colorado, or like, hey, or hey, do you want to, like, join an art group, or you might be around people that are also just focused on alcohol, and you're like, oh God, 5 years has rolled around and I've been doing this every night, so it can create a misalignment and a disconnect between who we want to be and who we feel we really are, and what we really care about, and how we're actually showing up. And that incongruence, that mismatch, is a real recipe for misery. It's a real recipe for feeling unfulfilled, and it, of course, will then lead us to want to drink more. It can disrupt and limit routines. People can think, I've even, people even saying stuff like, when they travel, they only want to go somewhere where there's a lot of bars, or only want to go to an event if there's an open bar, or, it can start to limit us. And our routines can start to be like, well, I won't book the early gym class because I won't make it because I'll be out the night before. Like, it can start to really impact how broad and rich our life could be, And our relationship with our body, we can start to, particularly if alcohol starts to change how we look, we can start to feel like a disgust with our body, or if the way that we feel when we're between drinking, I think that if we're feeling dissatisfied, if we're feeling bloated, if we're feeling that relationship with our body, and if we're not feeling good through drinking or between drinking, or we can almost want to just shut our body down and shut it out and not be present in it. So I think that's something that we don't talk about that much. But yeah, our relationship with our inner world and with our body can really be ruptured through drinking. Okay, so harm reduction. So we can think, Kenzy will talk to us about resources, but we think everything I'm saying is not to make people say, I must be abstinent. Like, I can't drink, drinking's bad. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to be curious about your relationship with alcohol, to think about if alcohol was a friend, are they a good friend? Do I have boundaries with alcohol? Does it something I have that kind of adds a little bit, but I've got, but doesn't take away, or there's a balance. So that's all this is. And we think about harm reduction. This isn't right, guys. Let's all get to AA, or let's never drink again. We're thinking, how do we just reduce the harm? How do we reduce the consequences of alcohol? If we think I still want to engage with alcohol, I just might want to freshen up my relationship with it. That's what this is about. So the first thing I would ask people to do is go back to the DSM criteria and have a look. Just be straight with yourself, be honest, and go, how does the way I am with alcohol on this island fit this criteria? If none of it checks, then you're like, okay, then I guess things are going okay. But if you're like, there's a couple of them that I struggle with, then okay, good. That's the first thing, is just really, really checking in and being honest with where things are at. Then the next thing I would do is, so you've checked in with your relationship with alcohol, check in with your sober life. Do you like your sober life? Do you like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Do you enjoy your job? Do you enjoy how your body feels on the inside? Do you enjoy how you think? Do you enjoy what you do? Because see, if you don't, you'll drink or you're at risk of drinking. So checking in with your drinking, then checking in with your sobriety. If you have a world that you feel enriched by, stimulated by, interested in, curious about, you've got a sense of, I've got goals, I've got places I'm going, things I'm doing, then that's quite protective when it comes to drinking. If you don't, you're at much more risk of going, well, what if I sleep all day Sunday? What was Sunday? So what if I'm rough for work on Monday? What was Monday? What was work? Who cares? So I think that is a really important part of harm reduction, is going, if I structure my sober life in such a way that I care about it, I naturally want to put boundaries between me and my drinking because I don't want to harm my sober life. Okay. So I think that's quite protective. So I don't know if this sounds controversial to people. I definitely believe you can engage in mindful drinking. I don't mean drinking whilst at Bliss Yoga Studio, or I don't mean like breathing and lying down and all that, like mindfulness. What I mean is, as you're drinking, be present in your body, notice how it tastes, slow down the rate of consumption, actually notice the bodily sensations, actually notice, am I enjoying this? Or am I just drinking because I'm looking for in Scotland we call it the dunt, the kick, right? It's like, actually ask yourself, am I enjoying the taste? Actually checking in with, oh, am I noticing early signs of intoxication? And actually, how do I feel about that? Am I chasing that a little bit? Or do I maybe need to slow that down a little bit? Because something I commonly hear is when people start binge and drinking too quickly, they're like, I didn't even notice the intoxication. I didn't notice the signs. I didn't even notice the taste because I wasn't in my body. I wasn't in my senses. Then before you know it, I'm falling about Rackham. So I just want us to think about slowing down, literally being present as you're consuming. And then, checking in if you're actually enjoying it. And if you're not, then maybe you think, okay, what am I doing then? What's happening for me right now that I'm seeking this? I think also thinking about, as you're doing that, as you're slowing down and being mindful, introduce water. Make sure there's some water between drinks. Making sure that you've eaten well, and noticing if you're like, oh, I'm feeling a wee bit light-headed or thirsty or hungry. Listen to those bodily signals and act appropriately. Your body's your friend, right? You want to be good friends with it. So act like you're in it together. Okay. I don't know what you think. I've put in a wee hot take group, and then you feel free to add a wee hot take yourself. But I think that stuff like this, like, don't get too acquainted with, and I don't mean bar staff again. If somebody says they work in a bar, you don't talk to them. What I mean is getting friendly with the people who work behind a specific bar, because then it goes back to the raccoon in a trench coat thing, where you can say, oh, I'm a wee bit lonely. I quite fancy a chat with Steve. And I'll go down and see Steve, and then you've had 4 pints, right? So I think if we build emotional hooks and anchors into places where there's alcohol, it can make it really hard for us to cut back, because we've created this secondary motive that keeps us there, and this kind of other excuse that we could give ourselves to go to a certain place. So that's my little I don't know if that sounds controversial or it sounds like whatever, but I just wanted to throw it in. That's just a little opinion for you all to consider. This 20-minute rule. So it's if we can introduce, it kind of ties in with some of the neuro stuff we talked about and what we know about cravings. If you can have a 20-minute pause between your drinks and have like water or something non-alcoholic even, it can be enough to just soften the reward system, quiet any cravings, and it can almost let you gain a little bit more of the prefrontal decision-making stuff back again. And we can go, actually, do I want another one? Or, like, where am I really at? Whereas if we just kind of keep going and going and going, we can be like, oh, now it's too late. So that's another part of the mindfulness, I guess. This is something I think as well is like making it truly optional, right? So, again, maybe this is a little bit of a hot take, right? And it ties in with this challenging yourself. So making it optional and challenging yourself. If we feel like I'm from Scotland, right? Sometimes people have rules in Scotland, like they might not say it out loud, but it's in their head of if it's free, you have it. If there's an open bar, you have a drink. If you're on the plane and they give you free wine, you have it. It's almost like it's not a choice. It's almost like you'd be mad not to, right? I would challenge yourself to be like, okay, make it optional. Alcohol isn't compulsory just because it's there. Even it's a little bit of a flex, like flex to yourself. Like it's a bit of a flex to be like, I could have had a free wine and I didn't. I was offered a round and I said no. It's a wee flex, right? It's a wee bit of power. It changes it from I just drink when it's there to I drink when I want. So I would invite that line of thought, instead of this kind of scarcity or this kind of like, it's happier and it only finishes at 7 and like, oh, I'm on a plane in an hour, it's going to land. I better get my last wine. Like, see what it's like to just flip that around and be like, no, I'm flexing. Like the two next to me can have a red one. I'm on the teas. I'm on the Diet Coke. You know what I mean? Like, make it a game. So yeah, I think that's something important. Again, maybe this feels like I don't know how people feel, but trying to order drinks. I'm not saying never. Again, this isn't about like shaming yourself for having a bottle or never getting intoxicated. But this is about habit breaking as well. If you're in the habit of I don't order a glass, I order a bottle. I wonder what it's like to see if you can break that habit. Order by the glass. If you're in a habit of we all just get rounds and before you know it, I've got 3 drinks to get through, and before you know it, Sally's bought me a shot of tequila. I don't even really drink tequila, but she's bought me one. So I wonder if you can keep out of that habit of like rounds and other people putting stuff down that starts to feel out of control. Stuff like, thinking about where you keep alcohol at home, if you do, and how much. Like if you got, is it in the fridge at eye level every time you open your fridge? Is it filling up half of a cupboard? These are all signs that you're prioritizing it, and it probably might mean more to you than you realize, right? So that's something else to check in with. And another thing, I'm just going to put this here. Don't question other people when they choose not to drink, right? Be an ally. If somebody's not drinking, be someone that it's safe to be around. If people don't want to drink, because we want to create a culture where it's okay to say no. It's okay to sit it out. It's okay to be teetotal or abstinent, or whatever you want to call it. Be that person, because you might want to be that person one day, and you'd want someone to not be going, oh, why are you not drinking tonight? Or you must be pregnant, or what? Like you're trying to be healthy, or just cut it out. Don't do it, because I think it helps us set a culture where it's okay to have lower levels of drinking or to abstain. And it helps you then, if you do that for someone else, you've then got someone you can go to if you maybe want to be chilling out a bit. Whereas if you make fun of people or you question people, they might take a step back from you, and then you might be left through a process of elimination with the heavy drinkers. Does that make sense? I can't see anybody's faces, so I don't know if you're nodding or not, but I'm just putting out there. So that's some thoughts about harm reduction, trying to be a wee bit outside the box, trying to be a bit creative with it, and personalizing it. Okay, so yes, that's me kind of talked broadly about the hidden costs and some ways to mitigate those costs. And then, I'll hand over now to the very capable Kenzy, who's going to tell you a little bit about resources on Ireland. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Jennifer. I do see a question here in the question box. What do you recommend to say when people question you? I suppose this is when they question you and ask why are you not drinking?
I get this a lot. I get clients doing it a lot. I think it depends what the truth is. I've actually, when I used to work in rehab, I used to say to people, because I've got an alcohol problem and I don't want to drink. So I think if that's the truth for you, I hate to say this, sometimes a wee bit of shock factor, a wee bit of, if you ask uncomfortable questions, then you have to sit with the discomfort of my answer. I genuinely am a bit of a fan of that. But if that's not the truth, or if you don't feel comfortable saying that, it can just be something like, sometimes I choose not to. Sometimes I drink, sometimes I don't. And you can even, if you want to, the cheekiness in me, but you might want to put it back to them and go, oh, why would you not? Why would you drink? Like, it's like, oh, does it seem strange to you to go out and not have a drink? You can redirect it. But yeah, so I guess you can go anywhere between being very matter of fact and very overly confident, and leaving them a little bit, oh, okay, think a bit more before I ask questions. Or I would kind of get away from like, oh, I'm just tired. Or, I think it is good to try and lead with yourself, lead with your honesty. Be like, do you know what? I'm just rethinking my relationship with alcohol. I don't want to be someone that always has a drink. Sometimes I want to just sit it out, or I'm just focusing on my health. Or do you know what? I just want to sleep a bit better tonight. You don't owe people like a big PowerPoint like we've just had. But good question. And the more that people, this is why I said, don't be that guy, don't be the person that questions, so that people don't have to be anxious about not drinking. So.
And I would agree. I would say that in Cayman, peer pressure really is something that takes place in a social situation. So sometimes honesty, if you do feel comfortable, will be the best answer that you can give. So just being mindful of the time, I'm going to go over some of the resources that are available on island. Luckily, we are very well equipped now to really deal with any presenting issues that may be taking place, whether that's going to be mental health, to substance use, alcohol use. And it doesn't have to be in the extreme, as Dr. Jennifer was saying. It's something that you may be saying, oh, maybe I need to reevaluate my relationship with alcohol. Maybe there's something else presenting here. Often when we see individuals who are engaging in excessive use, we see the behavior that may be taking place, whether it is compulsive use, or whether it's something that you feel like you must do, or there is a hook there to engage in that alcohol use. And often we see that there's something going on below that, whether it's seeking connection, whether it is trauma, mental health, whether it's pain, whether it's feeling uncomfortable, feeling anxious in a social setting, and then it's beginning to lead to have some negative consequence in your life, whether that is poor sleep, whether it is something a little bit more serious, such as a DUI, or it's I feel like I'm becoming dependent on this alcohol. So just to go to the next slide, to breeze over some of the services that we have available on island. Of course, this presentation is being hosted by the wonderful Alex Panton Foundation, which is a great resource for psychoeducational information, as well as the Kids Helpline. As we can see by the National Drug Council, children in the Cayman Islands are really engaging in alcohol use quite early. So this is a great resource if an individual really needs that support, and it's available from Thursday to Sunday at 3 to 9 p.m. And of course, they have Alex's Place too, which is a medical facility, which is to be a safe space for teens and young adolescents if they need to come in and get some support. Another service that is available if we're looking outside of business hours, somewhat like the Kids Helpline with Alex Panton Foundation, is now K-Mind, where by individuals are trained to be mental health professionals, first aiders. And it's an opportunity to connect. A lot of the time when we're thinking about alcohol use, we're thinking about seeking connection. And that may be a driving factor in an individual choosing to go to the bar, choosing to connect with that bar friend that they may have. It's an opportunity to really just talk to somebody if an individual feels like they need to. I work for the Department of Counselling Services, and we have a plethora of services that are available. A lot of them speak directly to alcohol and substance use, but of course, a lot of our services also are of reaching different factors that may be presenting and having some consequence or some impact on an individual's life. So to start with, we have the Counselling Center, which is where I work, where we do group services. A lot of the time people are quite nervous. They do not want to engage in group service. Cayman is very small. I don't want people to know my business. What I say to individuals who have some of those fears is give it a go. Try it out. And often after we finish our group, what I hear is, wow, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And it's an opportunity to people really see that they are not alone in their journey that they're having. And there's a lot of people on island who are going through similar struggles. And it creates a system of support of individuals who have similar lived experiences or going through the same challenges so that they can get some support. So those would be our group services. And of course, we do individual counseling services, couples counseling, family counseling, children counseling as well. We have services as well for teens and young children who may be engaging in alcohol from a young age. If this is disclosed to us, we would inform the parent that this is taking place, as it is a safety concern. However, we want to let you know that this is not something that would be reported to authorities, which again is another barrier for people being worried about seeking that service. So just to clarify that. We have our Caribbean Haven, which is residential services and non-medical detox, which is a very comprehensive program for individuals whose alcohol use has gone beyond the occasional drink. It's where it's become a compulsive behavior where an individual feels like they simply cannot or they cannot stop, and they're experiencing that withdrawal that we were talking about a little bit earlier. We have that one as well, and we have the Family Resource Center. The Family Resource Center, their mandate is going to be parenting, whereby they can get some tools, some skills to add to their parenting toolbox if their child is engaging in substance use, their teenager is engaging in risky behaviors, as well as how can they equip themselves to be the best parent that they can be. If an individual, for example, has been drinking and there's going to be that maybe a breakage within that relationship, it's how can we rebuild that parent-child relationship. So we work on all those things as well. Then we have, sorry, I'm going very, very fast. I'm just being very mindful of the time. We have the National Drug Council, which is excellent as they go into the schools, they get the surveys, they give us really good qualitative data on what is happening in our islands, as well as they do groups such as Alcohol Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and there's also groups as well for families and friends of those who are presenting with alcohol or substance use challenges or other forms of addiction, because it presents more than just in terms of substance use. And those are free, and they happen in every district, and they happen in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening time, and many different locations. And you can even do it online if you're feeling worried about engaging in services in Cayman to kind of get your toes wet and see what that is all about. So there's a lot of services that we've already covered right now for if you're watching this presentation, you're thinking, actually, I would like to get a little bit of support, or I have a friend, or I have a family member, or I have a child that I really want to connect with a service provider. Of course, we have our Health Services Authority in Cayman, which will do the outpatient behavioral health services. There is Hope for Today Foundation, which is the halfway house and recovery support. There's other services available, such as the Employee Assistance Program. If your employer has signed up for this service, it's an opportunity for you to engage individually or as a couple with a trained professional. Then we have private therapeutic providers. For example, we have Aspire from Dr. Jennifer is working there. And then we have the Cayman Islands Crisis Center too. If there is domestic violence taking place, important to note that alcohol does not cause domestic violence. However, it definitely is a catalyst for when an individual is impaired for that behavior to become a lot more aggressive in nature and more dangerous as well. So those are some of the service providers in Cayman, and that is just a screenshot of some. What I would also like to say, if we can go to the next slide, and Dr. Jennifer really touched on this, is really building that supportive foundation. People who have your back, your 3 a.m. friends. If you need to call someone at 3 a.m., you know they're going to pick up. And creating social networks that are really meaningful for you, where you feel like you have a sense of belonging, is really important, as those are the people who will have your back and they may challenge you, like Dr. Jennifer said. A lot of time people are not fortunate to have a good family support network, and it's seeking out those relationships that would be healthy. And a great way to do that, if there is an alcohol issue taking place, is engaging in groups, because there's many individuals who are seeking those connections, seeking that support. And it's a wonderful way for you to broaden your foundation in terms of, I'm having a difficult time right now. This is what I used to do. I want to engage in a behavior different. Let me call this person. And that all speaks to the developing a foundation of accountability and creating your own village, creating your own community. Because when we talk about alcohol use, we're really talking about people, places, and things, and this leads to that reoccurring patterns of consumption. So if we take a step back, we evaluate our own alcohol use and kind of see what changes we can make in terms of those people, places, and things. It can be quite empowering, I believe. So a lot of different resources. Much of this can be found online, but also I'd be happy to engage in a conversation if anyone wants a little bit more information about what there is available.
Thanks, Kenzy. Can you say a tiny bit about Aspire? So we can definitely support people with more mild or moderate alcohol use disorder if they meet that category. But when people start to tip into the more severe range, we're not like you really need then a support network. You wouldn't just want one private psychologist, you would want a network. So that's when Safe Haven or somewhere rehabilitative, or even Infinite Mind Care, they have a structured alcohol use kind of alcohol awareness program and things. So I just want to kind of flag that. That's that's our kind of what we can offer and what we can't offer, basically.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And also tapping into multiple resources, seeing what works for you and how you can benefit from each that may be available.
I just wanted to, I know we had a question, I can't see it now. Oh, here we go. Sorry, 2 seconds. I just saw a wee question. Somebody said, what do you do in a situation where drinking is part of the culture and there's no hangouts or events without it? So I'm happy to speak on that. I don't know, Kenzy, if you want to add a wee bit on that.
You can go ahead, Dr. Jonathan.
So I think the first thing I would say is, it's like two things can be true. Like, it's absolutely true that there's a lot of places on Ireland that are alcohol orientated, and I think creeping into places where it maybe shouldn't be, like yoga events, art events, creative events. Like, I see that, but we don't want to get into a helpless mindset of there's nowhere to go, everything's about alcohol, because that isn't true. There are places you can go. There are, like, even like, I know there's that wee place in Cayman Bay that's it's all kind of board games and stuff. They don't have a bar in there, as one example. There can be book clubs, there can be kind of fitness orientated things. There are like chess nights and I get astrology and astronomy mixed up. Astronomy club. Like, I just want to be careful we don't get into a mindset of there's no escape, because that isn't true. So I would say, first of all, being creative and curious about where are spaces where alcohol is not at the forefront. And then I would say, when you are in a space where there's alcohol, it's help yourself tune into other rewards. So can it be rewarding to listen to the live music? Can it be rewarding to be in your nice clothes and feel like you're having you're dressed up and having a good time, right? So it's helping your brain pair those events with the other rewarding elements of them. And then the final thing I would say is, when you're in those events, if you're looking to cut down, keep an eye on who you're around and notice the people that are drinking slowly. Notice the people that stop at a couple, then have a water, or like head off early, and see if you can kind of gravitate towards those people. I do think that not everybody at all times is drinking 100 beers an hour. Like that starts to become a mythology. So yeah, keeping a little eye out for where are the places, like you said, Kenzy said about people, places, things. Where are the people, where are the places, and what are the things that aren't as alcohol orientated, and can I orientate to them? That's what I would say.
Something I want to add too with that, if you both don't mind, when it comes to hanging out and drinking, a lot of times too, we like how the drink looks and it makes us like feel fancy and it's a socialization. It's true
Yeah.
though. It makes us
It's
feel
very right.
so it makes us feel fancy. It makes us feel like, oh, we're still socializing. So a lot more restaurants, and this is something that I tend to gravitate a little bit more towards it myself. A lot more restaurants have more mocktails.
Mm-hmm.
So you can still have the fancy drink. You can still take a cute picture and like feel everything in that moment, but you're drinking something that has no alcohol in it. So kind of thinking about alternatives as well. Like, even if it's just like, okay, I'm gonna get a club soda or sparkling water, just add a wedge of lemon in there for me, please. Like, you can fancy up the
Yeah.
non-alcoholic drinks to and still socialize in that way.
Yeah.
So I just want to
My yeah, no, that's a really great point. And that's that anticipatory reward. You still get part of the reward, but you're not consuming the alcohol. My favorite go-to is like a cranberry and soda water, because they always put a little lime in it. It was a little bit jazzy, but it's alcohol free. And also, the more demand there is, the more supply there'll be. If we get in the habit of asking, hey, have you got any non-alcoholic drinks, or do you have anything else in your mocktail range? And even places like I noticed Governor's Village, like in the little cafe there, they've got a whole fridge full of like, well, they've alcohol as well, of course, but they've got lots of teas and they've got coffees and they've got lots of little canned drinks that are alcohol free. So the more we ask, the more we get. But that's a great point. Thanks, Renee. So do you have any other, I know we've run over a little bit, but just if anyone's got any kind of questions or anything they'd like to add or reflect.
We could stay on a little bit, but again, because it's everyone's lunchtime as well, right? Just want to be mindful of that. Please complete the feedback survey. I sent the link earlier, but I sent it again in the chat for you to do because your feedback will be super helpful and it will allow us to revamp or revise our lunch and learns moving forward as well. So yeah, I don't think there are any more questions. You all can actually, okay, there's one. Okay.
How would you recommend approaching this topic with a loved one who may not recognise their addiction? So yeah, this is a really tough topic, and we think about there's different stages that people go through with if they are at that point of like severe alcohol use disorder dependency, where they may be kind of almost in that denial kind of phase. That we call it pre-contemplation. So yes, it can be hard to just have a direct question. What I would say is we're trying to avoid. You see on TV these things of like what do they call them? There's a word for an American
Interventions.
interventions. Right? You get this thing of let's have an intervention, let's try. So that some people that will give them the light bulb moment and that represents the rock bottom inverted commas and they change. For other people, it drives them further away. So it's not necessarily what I would say is the first port of call is trying to just confront. It might be trying to be curious with them, be like, hey, have you like what how are you finding your relationship with alcohol just now? Or even like how are you feeling just now? How's your mood? What's happening? So it's trying to show that curiosity, trying to be low confrontation initially, and it can be helpful to kind of almost help people join dots a little bit. Might be, like if they are much more tired or they've not been going out as much, or trying to gently highlight to them maybe the change and the cost can be helpful if they're not pairing that, so and also yeah, it can be, I guess, trying to get them to engage in things that don't orientate around alcohol and just seeing how they cope. Because even if they struggle, that's information you can go to. Wow, it really seemed hard for you to, you mentioned that you wanted to drink, even though this was like we were at the movies, or so it can help you. What you want to do is gently build their own insight and awareness and acceptance of the links between their alcohol and the outcomes that they're experiencing. But I have empathy because it's tough when you're a family member. You see it very clearly, and they just aren't ready. That is a really difficult situation. I don't know if thank you. I don't know if Kenzy's got anything maybe she wants to add on that as well.
I would also note that your connection with that individual is going to be very important. Often what we see in the movies is those interventions where the family's coming together and they're saying, stop the drinking, or we are not going to be there and support you anymore. And that may be the worst possible thing that you can do for an individual in that situation. It's letting them know that you love them, you're there for them, and taking ownership of, I'm quite worried, because when we pull out that finger and say, you've been drinking a lot, those walls of defense immediately fly up too. Mm-hmm. So kind of taking some ownership of how it may be affecting you, and that you're there for them, you love them, and when they're ready to talk, that you're going to be there for them would be important, that they know that they have you.
I think just briefly something else, it's something important is to try and have boundaries without ultimatums, right? So say for example, if somebody does have an alcohol problem, or you can see that there is disordered, it might be saying, I'm happy to meet with you, but I want to go for a coffee. I want to meet during the day. Like, be that person that they know you love them without alcohol, and that they know that you're not going to kind of turn a blind eye and dismiss and kind of subconsciously support their drinking. I think that you can be boundaried but still be kind. And there's a nice, I know I talk an awful lot. There's a nice little thing to remember from the attachment literature that's an approach called connect before correct. So instead of being like, hey, stop that drinking, you're getting it, how you're not showing up for your kids, or that's just going into the correct part. You're trying to correct someone. Connect before correct might be, I love you and I care about you, right? And this is coming from a place of I'm worried. right? So you're making that connection, or even say, hey, look, I know you've been really stressed lately, or making that connection, then going to the part where you're gently correcting the behavior. Like, hey, I wondered if we could have a chat about what's been happening for you lately, because I've noticed some changes. I'd love to be able to talk to you about it, because I care about you. So connect, then correct, instead of I'm going straight to like trying to correct someone, if that makes
And
sense.
something that I've noticed too in my work as well is that actually modeling the behavior yourself of healthy alcohol use, right? Not necessarily coming around with the person who has an alcohol issue with your glass of wine in front of them, or even just like, when you're out to dinner, for example, and they say, "Oh, you're not drinking?" Like, "Yeah, I'm not drinking tonight." Like you start to model that behavior that, yeah, I'm putting my own boundaries with alcohol. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's another thing to
Yeah.
have as well.
That's a really, really good point. And it makes you sort of credible and also a safe place. Like, who's my friend that loves and accepts me when I don't drink? It's not the friends I feel I have to, have a few drinks in to go and speak to. So that's a really great point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so it is 2:10. So if we can go to the next, we're gonna
Yeah.
go to the end.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any other questions, by the way? But go ahead to the end for me. And one more. So if you do, go back.
Oh.
If you do have any other questions, please send them to either admin@alexpantafoundation.ky or edu@alexpantafoundation.ky. More specifically to the edu one, because that is the one I am able to access directly. And if you have any questions, send them there and I can forward it to these lovely ladies. And yeah. But also if you need any more support, you can visit our website at alexpantafoundation.ky. This presentation will also be added to our website and our YouTube channel. So if you want to watch it again, you can do so. Okay. And please feel free to visit NDC's website as well, as this is a partnership with them and they have loads of resources as Kenzy talked about. Okay. All right. Thank you all very, very much. I'm going to stop recording.
Okay.
And yeah.